Burns is 30 miles south of Cheyenne. My parents lived there. My grandparents lived there, and my mother went through high school there. My father worked for a ranch in Burns. My mother was born in 1901 and lived most of her young life right in Burns. And my father worked for a rancher. What was his name? Bastion. My mother was in the first graduating class of the high school there in Burns. It was a brand new school. My father never went through school. My mother's sister's name was Glow, and her brother's name was Menzo. They also lived in Burns. Cy Manful lived there and played on the ball team with my father. And they both worked for the same rancher. My father was the catcher on the team. Grandpa Hispin was a section foreman for that area, and on that working team was my father and my Uncle Homer, who had married Glow. My father courted my mother on a horse, and the horse and the saddle that my father owned, he sold to buy my mother a wedding ring. What I remember about Burns primarily is that they lived in a section house about 30 feet from the railroad track, and every time a big train would come through, the house would shake and rattle and noise would scare me under the bed. Their house was, as I say, 30 feet from the section where he worked, and their outhouse was about another 30 feet about west of the house. And between the house and the outhouse was a pump that they used for water. My grandfather used the outhouse, a two-seater. He would take his catalog out there to use as TP. I've always wondered how much of that waste actually got into the drinking water. Grandpa Hespin chewed tobacco, and my grandmother was a little feisty woman. They came home one night from some social event, and the house was locked, and he was going to get to the house and open the door for her before she could come around. He went to spit out the door and hit her right in the face and she let him have it with all with all her might. Well, it looks as though the population had increased about 4 people. It was 304 people this time. We were introduced to Burns by 2 cows sitting out along the fence. But we came in further, and we watched a guy that was mowing his front yard. It turns out that this guy was the former mayor and had lived since 1951 there. He had come out of the service and went to Burns. He knew where the school had been, but he also knew that it had been taken apart and parts had been moved around on his own property. He showed us some of the equipment that had been in the school.
Oh, that's just like Dad. Yeah. I know. We won't. We're doing the video. We're doing a video.
Way a few years ago, when I first came here, I worked for Theodore Sr. for 3 years out north. He bought what they call the Mason place. last then it was a vocational ag shop in West Point.
It's the original school of Burns.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was just east of what used to be.
Yeah, it's about 2 or 3 blocks over that way.
It was a block and a half that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's
It's my living room and kitchen floor.
Yeah, right.
He's got a great
this is the
job.
original school.
This is the
This is
original
the
school.
original school.
Okay.
And you get back in.
Love
Anyway, I put it to good use
Yeah.
Yes, you did.
Yeah.
It looked like you worked hard in it.
for about
I'll have to tell my sister all
20
this.
years. I just played it.
Yeah.
Get
As he falls in the
Yeah,
pit.
right.
That is so great.
Well,
That is so great. Thank
I
you
appreciate
again.
it.
Look at these houses. Look at this house. Isn't that just adorable? Could have been this one right here.
True story. This was really an outstanding trip for all of us. I got to know more about Burns at this time probably than what I knew before. We had gone down the road to where it used to be, and it was a dead end, so we had to take a round trip around it to get back to where we wanted to be, which was at where the Bob Humphreys lived. And then just down the road was where my grandparents had their poultry house and field. And across the street was where the section house was. And then immediately across the road from there was the Palmer house. And now none of those buildings are the same. They're all different. Silos that were there are no longer there. The depot that the Fines were managing was no longer there. And of course all the workers' houses were gone. It was just bare land at that point. No sign of where the outhouse was, or where the pump was, or where their house was. Right about in here is where my grandparents' house was. You go on down, and then his outhouse was there, their water pump was in there, and their house was over here.
So it was on this side.